You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Thanks, Mr. McPhee, for showing up on Power Athlete Radio.
Let's go.
Let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
We had a blast yesterday at the F1.
Nice.
It was cool. We have a mutual friend, obviously Arash and Frank. So we showed up and it was fun. We got to see Porsche's races in the F1 and then eat a bunch of free food and have a bunch of drinks and probably one of the more bougie things I've been to in a long, long time. I see Joe Rogan and Peter Attia and all these celebrities show up and I'm like looking at him. I'm like, are we in the right place? They're going to kick us out any fucking minute.
I met Joe down when I was getting the ice cream sandwich. They got this gelato machine. I'm like, can I put that on 2 cookies? The lady's like, see, you know what I mean? So she makes this for me, right? But I turn around and there was Joe right there. First time I met him. And then they knew who I was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, nice to meet you guys. But everyone was there, man. And then a lot of people had security there also, I noticed.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. There was a lot of very good-looking girls that we were for maybe what we would call the kids today called dime pieces that were there with private security, and we couldn't figure out necessarily why or who they were. We were like, that chick is pretty good-looking, but why does she have private security?
Yeah.
So, and then the funny part was as we were walking out, I ran into Rogan's security guys who I've known because they are former NSW guys who I've known for years. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? He's like, I work for Rogan. I'm like, since when? Since always. So it was neat to run into some former friends and some guys that we used to work with and hadn't seen in a number of years.
I'm glad you guys had fun because I was changing diapers and consoling babies.
Awesome. Mike's wife just had, 3 weeks ago?
2 weeks.
So they had a little girl 2 weeks ago.
Woo.
Yeah, back into the baby fight.
Yeah, about to turn 47.
Sleep debt.
Oh,
love it. Sleep debt.
Dude, my workouts have just nosedived. And
didn't I tell you having kids is a young man's game?
Oh, I know that.
I know you know
when
that.
you marry she's 13 years younger. It was sort of, understood, but I couldn't conceptualize how rough this was going to be. But she's a cute little girl. You saw her. Cute.
Yeah.
So
no, well, it's funny. Regardless, and I've held enough babies, and I got 3 of my own to know when a kid's good looking or not. Sometimes they're look like little aliens, and you give them back. She's a cute little girl, so it's definitely. But as I told my wife, I'm like, explaining it to her, and my wife look on her face. She's like, "Mother of God, can you imagine having that?" I'm like, "No, couldn't imagine it." There's a point where you just are done. Yeah. So what's up?
Nothing, man. Hit me with these questions. Right. You said you had a bunch for me.
Let's go. Well, I feel like I don't really have to give much of a bio for you, but if you wanted to give a little bit of a bio, a little background, or we can just get into the fight.
No. I'm John McPhee, right? SOB Tactical. Some guys call me the Sheriff of Baghdad, which is the funniest thing I ever heard. And a buddy of mine was like, if you don't name your business that, you're missing a big opportunity.
I thought SOB was just son of a bitch. And when I met you, and then later on, I was like, oh, Sheriff of Baghdad. Oh, okay, I get that.
Yeah. So, and I do SOB Tactical. Literally every day I'm on the range. I teach people, police academies, I teach people to shoot, right? I teach more advanced stuff. I do all kinds of things, but mostly range stuff.
But before you did this, you kind of had a storied career, not only as an Army guy, but then getting into SF and going on into Delta.
Yeah, so I started as an Army Ranger, joined in the Desert Storm, Miss Desert Storm.
Did you tell me you were a welder and a diesel mechanic?
Yeah, so...
we have that in common. So.
I actually joined the Army when I was 21, late bloomer in Army standards, But I worked at a shop, and when I was a young kid, my brother had to get good grades, and I was greasing my stepdad's semi truck. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Did you hit the water pump grease fitting? Yes, I did. You know what I mean? Did you put enough grease? I heard it come out the back. You know what I mean? And I was adjusting brakes, and then So I always kind of worked in these truck shops, oil changes, right? I started with like car oil changes and tune-ups, and I pumped gas. Like I pumped a lot of gas as a kid. But I always worked as a kid. And then I worked in shops. The job I had, I worked in shops, and I in the winter kind of rebuilt bucket loaders, like hinges, stuff like that, right? And then in the summer, I would do gravel hauling trucks. You know how the bed goes up like 40 feet or whatever. Sometimes they tip over, right? Twists a frame, cracks the frame of the truck, and it'll collapse some of the trailer wall. I would just 100% fix the truck and trailer. It'd take me weeks as a kid. And one day I was like, why I always get these 3-week projects? And my boss is like, you're the only one that could figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, those gravel trucks are sometimes loaded with 70 to 100,000 pounds in fucking gravel.
Yeah, and it just crushes it, breaks the frame. I'd C-channel a new frame rail, put it inside. The worst part of the whole process is when I'd see the inside of the frame. I'd have to drill all the holes out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd just be drilling holes for a
fucking
week.
Rivets.
Yeah, rivets and holes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I did that as a kid, and then I don't know, man. I was almost 21. Life was kind of getting away from me. I knew I wanted to join the Army, so I figured I made good money, and I was like, it's kind of now or never. You know what I mean? So I joined, and then I was the only 21-year-old. When I get to my squad, and the squad leader in Ranger Battalion's you stay here. Everyone else, no drinking. You know what I mean? And then no buying alcohol for those guys. Look at them. See those guys? No booze for them. And it was okay, I was hungover through RIP. Why? I could go buy booze anytime I wanted. You know what I mean? And then, so I was just kind of a late bloomer as Army standards go. But I went to Ranger Battalion. Desert Storm-ish, missed the Desert Storm. Later we jumped in Iraq, broke my leg, landed off the airfield in a minefield, had to walk a ways, fucked up 30 wind jump. And then I was in Ranger Battalion for about, 5 years. And we had this this little sergeant major guy who you got to go back to the big Army and give your experience to them. I didn't join the Army for a reason. I joined to be a Ranger. This is where I am. This is where I want to stay. So it kind of led me to Special Forces. I went to that selection, kind of in my day, you didn't know. I'll just try this out. You know what I mean? There was no internet. You're not
What year was this?
Special Forces selection was 90. Fuck, I don't even remember, 90.
But this is all pre 9/11 though.
5,
yeah, way pre 9/11.
90s, yeah, mid 90s, right? And then so I made it to Special Forces, and that honestly fucking sucked. You know what I mean? The Bill Clinton years on a Special Forces team with nothing to do, sucked. So a buddy of mine, he was a Mogadishu guy, a C Squadron guy, and he's like, hey, check this out. He wrote down 6 a.m. in the field on post. And I was like, what's this? And he's like, you're going to take the PT test. And I'm like, I'm fucked up. I'm not taking any PT test in 5 hours. You know what I mean? I'm at your house drinking. I ain't good. No. And then I went anyway. And then it kind of went from there. I went to unit selection. And that was back then it was a black hole because a guy would make it, and then you never see him again. You know what I mean? So you don't know what happened to him. Did he make it? Did he not? Did he get out of the Army? Because as soon as they come back, you're gone. You know what I mean? So I was on a Special Forces team 10 months to the day. And then by the end of the year, I was at the unit in the mid-90s. And then I did my time. I was a team leader, kind of made Sergeant Major, went to 7th Group, made Sergeant Major, and went back to the J staff and fucking hated my life. You know what I mean? Everyone's I had to work for these generals. I'm about to name names, but I won't. But I had to work for all these generals people love, and when you're with them every day, you're just what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? And then and then I retired in 11. I started teaching shooting classes, and I tell people all the time, I think I do for work about 3% of what I'm good at. You know what I mean? So I teach basic shooting, I teach advanced shooting, and then that's it. Takes us to now. And which leads us to the fitness thing, I bet.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Let me introduce you to our Holistic Athlete Movement Readiness Program, also known as HAMMER. Created after working extensively with Naval Special Warfare, the U.S. Army, Marines, and first responders. HAMMER is battle-tested training sharpened at the highest level, delivering when it counts. If you're a warfighter, door kicker, or first responder, head to powerathletehq.com/HAMMER and claim your 7-day free trial today. Now back to the show. Yeah. Well, this is a fitness podcast by definition, but we don't really do fitness. What it's really about is just having amazing conversations with intellectually intelligent people that have done cool shit. Awesome. And trying to just put a spotlight on that. What I'm really fascinated by is defining moments and the challenging things that help form people. And I do think it's fascinating too about growing up in Chicago and wilderness. I mean, I grew up a son of a lawyer, and my dad, when I told him I wanted to work on cars and all that, he was more than happy to teach me how to do it. But when I told him I wanted to weld and do some of these things, he just kind of laughed. And then when I moved here to Texas, all the skills that I developed in terms of welding and being able to do this is really kind of came to fruition in terms of owning a ranch. But looking back on your time in Delta, what was the most challenging defining moment that you think helped shape your command and your leadership, and really just that single defining moment? What I've found is for professional athletes and just people of your guys' stature, there's always that kind of 1 8-mile moment where you're like, man, I didn't know that, but this altered the trajectory of my life.
That's a good question. I think for me, it was so you go to unit selection, you have no idea what's going on. You're just walking for a month, and just one point to another. No one talks to you, right? And then you go to a board, right? Brutal questions, by the way. And then you leave, and the first thing I did is you try on these, remember the old GSG9 boots, Adidas Assault boots?
No, I was wearing
he
cleats.
He just dated himself. He just dated himself.
I think I still have those boots.
He's like, I'd wear them on Saturday night.
Not saying, just saying. So I try on these boots, and I realize fucking the Army don't fucking wear this shit. You know what I'm saying? No, what you do is you try it on everything so they know your true size. So when you come to training, they give you shit that fucking fits you, and it's your size. Put it on, let's go train, right? But when I put those boots on, I knew I didn't want to fuck up from then on.
We work with the guys at Development Group in Naval Special Warfare, and the one thing which is universal for those guys, and whenever I ask them, what are you training for? Their biggest question is, I don't want to leave all the fucking hotness and the cool shit.
Fuck.
That once you get here, you get access, there's an unlimited budget, you get to do all the cool shit. This is what we envisioned from the time we were watching Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen. This is the cool shit that we thought that was going to happen. And the guy's entire training thing is about, how do I stay durable? How do I stay longevity? How do I stay here for the entirety of my career? Because going back feels like a step backwards.
Yeah, I didn't want to be anywhere else. I didn't.
Was there a moment that you were in, whether it was not only in training but also maybe within some forward position, where a moment happened that really kind of just polarized you as an individual, where you may realize this is what I'm destined to do, this is who I am?
I don't know about that per se, but I would say the first time the first time we were mortar and rocketed to Battle of Tora Bora, right? I was with another guy, and I'm like, yo, is this incoming, outgoing? This is fucking fantastic. You know what I mean? The noise, the dust, savages running around, la, 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 you know what I mean? I don't know where he's going, but this is awesome, right? And then what I didn't know is they were mortaring the white guys on the edge of the cliff in the red Toyota truck. Bad idea looking back, but I knew right then and there, whatever that was, it was fucking awesome. You know what I mean? It's just fucking more of this, whatever. And I didn't even know what it was. You know what I mean? I just wanted more of it.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show. And then was there obviously that moment grew in, and then as we were kind of talking yesterday, there was a whole bunch of opportunities to necessarily go out on your own.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about,
solo missions. Yeah.
The solo
hundreds
stuff.
of them. Yeah.
How does that come about? Because I always kind of thought like with like Delta and guys that are in Special Operations Command, you always hear like the team environment.
Right.
And when you were talking yesterday about like doing all the solo stuff, I'm like, so not a team? Or is it something where they were like, okay, you have a specific opportunity to go do something?
I don't know. Like this kind of stuff just happens from time to time. I'm not the only one, probably won't be the last. Right. But I think there's just kind of times where, man, in the beginning of the war, this fucking army shit. We're going to land the helicopters on top of the guys. Let's go. That shit didn't fucking work. The bad guy has a fucking say right now. And if we're not smarter than him, you think we're going to catch him? You know what I mean? And it's like hunting coyotes, in my opinion, is the coyote's going to hear the caller, and as hungry as that fucker is, he ain't going for the bait yet. He's got to check it out first. And I think like that's what we were fucking up. And I think that was what the Army thought going in, like the Special Forces, other Army Rangers, right? Is this is how we do it. And it's like, well, no, the enemy has the final say. And if he knows what the fuck you're doing, you're all going to die today. You want to do that? That doesn't sound smart to me. Like, matter of fact, if that's what's happening today, let me be towards the back of the stack and let me just watch, right? Like, so I think it was like, all these moments just, I don't know if there was like ever a defining moment or anything like that, but I just think like, I just did this so much. We got, so many mortars, so many rockets, so many, like over time, you just kind of, there's a pattern to it. You know what I mean?
Was it something that you had to prepare for where like, now all of a sudden, or was it almost easier that you weren't having to worry about other people?
It's harder in the sense that like every step of the way I learned like 1,000% more than going out with 3 guys, 12. Fucking 20, you know what I mean? Like, there's no one to rely on. No one's coming to get me, right? And in all the scenarios you're trained for, you know what I mean? Yeah, the guy tackles you, shoot him. Okay, I shoot this guy and then what? Because I'm the only one out here. You know what I mean? So it's like, don't shoot. Don't make contact, right? Be the coyote. Stay on the fringe, right? And then, so I learned so much just being out in where the normal logic we use, the normal decision making, the normal, all our kind of daily norms do not apply here because you're alone and no one's going to back you up. I don't even have one other guy where like, there's 2 of us, like we will fuck you up. You know what I mean? One-on-one, like why you want to do that?
What was the primary, were they primarily short or kind of like long action type stuff? Was it you like going out for a night or were you going out for weeks sometimes?
So in Afghanistan, I was out for like couple weeks. In Iraq Iraq was a little different, like beginning of the war, other government agencies would like show up in front of someone's house with like 8 black Suburbans, you know what I mean? And then like, guess who they're gonna find down by the river tomorrow, you know what I mean? And like when you need information, killing people ain't cool. We needed what that guy knew, I'm glad he's dead. I mean, I'm not bothered by it, but we kind of needed to talk to him a little bit, So these guys are ending up dead. And then normally, the government couldn't get the authorities to just kind of pick these guys up right. So I had a fleet of vehicles. I think I had about 40 vehicles, stole a bunch out of Baghdad, procured a ton, and I just do different vehicles daily, and I'd run people, pick them up, do meets, take prisoners by places, have them point places out. I do all kinds of shit, you know what I mean? Now, I did get a normally keep them in the trunk. You know what I mean? Because I'm alone and like I'm not taking a chance you're fucking getting to me. And I don't care if my boss thinks that's inhumane. You drive with this motherfucker. He's a terrorist. You know what I mean? So I did try to safeguard myself as best as possible. But Iraq was more like day missions. You know what I mean? And then Afghanistan, like, this is just going to take fucking time. Only because you can't get there from here to there easily, you know? It's not that it's far. It's not that it's hard to get to. It's going to take time if you're not riding helicopters or jumping in.
So a lot of AFO type operations.
Yeah, all of it is AFO type stuff. And it was all in the beginning of the war, confirm or deny, right? And it was like a lot of these generals are like U.S. eyes on only. Like, okay, well, let's launch this reconnaissance right now. Let's go. Let's get this thing hustling. It's like, you can't leave the wire. Like, what? These are conflicting orders there, you know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't conflicting orders. You know what I mean? They didn't want us leaving the wire to get the eyes on to go after it, right? So I think in the beginning it was just, you know, not only did I was going out alone, but like, you know, we were fighting our own command on making these good decisions and keeping these guys alive, picking these guys up, getting their information, you know? Because without it, like, the war is useless.
Why is there such a disconnect? You know, I mean, as somebody who never served in this, I mean, you know, the vision I see of it, you see through TV and obviously, you know, hanging out with guys like you, there always feels like there was a massive disconnect from the top down to being able to the decision makers to the people that were actually boots on the ground.
Even look at it from a just rudimentary level. You remember when I think it was the senior Army leadership thought SF was going off the rails merely because of how you guys looked with the beards.
Yeah.
It made the headlines that Army Special Forces was going off the reservation when in fact, it's what those units were designed to do and how it should be. And the reality of where conventional military just has a distaste for special operations and advanced, field operations. And it's unfortunate, but there's a great series called SAS Rogue Warrior. And it was, I think, produced about a year and a half ago about the evolution of the SAS, primarily in North Africa. Yeah. And basically, it was stood up to be a diversionary operation, but they selected guys out of jails. They pretty much had leeway, but they also knew they would not return to England with honor. And it goes into how effective they became. They were just on their own, doing raids on German air bases, taking out not only pilots and air crewmen, but just destroying plane after plane, which was pivotal in taking back North Africa from Germany. But there's always been a conventional distaste for special operations. And as you professionalize the military, which we've become, I'd say, overly professionalized in a lot of ways, it
garbage
robs the intent of what these units were designed to do. And sometimes, you know what? It's like the old Winston Churchill quote, unleash the dogs of war. And unfortunately, when you unleash them and they are effective, and when they're effective, bad things are going to happen, collateral damage, the fingers go back into the pot and really pull these units back.
Yeah, I would say when we were most effective in general was when they're just like, Zarqawi days. This guy's fucking dangerous, go kill him. And this is when we were our most effective, is fucking gunning people down daily, nightly, you know what I mean? Never letting up,
Was that early in the Obama days?
Bush.
Yeah,
Bush. That was the forefront of, General McChrystal sort of revolutionized JSOC and really he identified the need to speed up and outpace the enemy, because Al-Qaeda was quite successful in 2004 to 2005, and he developed the F3EA process to speed up operations.
Took it from the unit. We were already doing it. When he said it, it was a better idea than anybody else.
Yeah.
So we were already doing it. You know what I mean? So
he just took the gloves off.
Or he identified, hey, these guys are being highly successful. Yeah. Replicate the model. It's best practices.
Yeah. And then same with like the Rangers and the Merrill teams in Afghanistan. Super successful. I worked for McChrystal, and I would say this about him is if you were doing your job, he'd leave you alone. Like, he didn't mess with me much. You know what I mean? So if you weren't doing your job, you know what I mean, you're going to get the talking to, which is like, sounds like a pep talk, and I think this guy likes me, but he used some big words, you know what I mean? So you got to like figure out like what he just said, you know? So, and that's all that fucking officer fucking bullshit talk, you know? But I would say this is McChrystal. If the guys were like crushing it, like more of this, why wouldn't we do more of this? And as a boss, it's a pretty easy decision. Like, that worked. Let's do it again today. Well, work today. Like, let's do more of this. Right. So I think McChrystal, his biggest claim to fame, in my opinion, is he harnessed the internet for war. VTC, email, and he closed the planet down, and it started the unblinking eye. And then from then on, those guys were fucked.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so he brought kind of information and didn't allow, or I guess was accessing it all. So those individuals didn't have but I wouldn't credit him with that.
Like, I think the internet was happening. He just happened to sit there at the time, in my opinion, because a lot of the stuff we were already doing. And then like, he's like, "Men, we're going to keep doing this." It was like, wait, is that what we were doing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. We'll keep doing that. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, I was too busy, and I'm tired from last night, you know?
You did bring up, so Team Merrill, and this you've got to sort of segregate this. The 75th Ranger Regiment was the only unit capable of this. Was about 150 guys. They would drop them into a valley where it was an enemy safe haven, where they had total control of the area, and they would send in 150 Rangers, and they would just clean house and know their unit in the military. Not even big Army infantry or big Marine Corps infantry could do what these guys did. The 75th, the war revolutionized the 75th. To what they are now, and 75th is just one of the best military units. In fact, I don't know why the Marine Corps doesn't try to replicate making their infantry battalions more like the 75th.
Agreed.
Period. They would be so much more highly effective, but they rest on the laurels of the history of where the Marine Corps has been wildly successful, and you can't take that away. But the 75th is just, those guys are freaking awesome.
So when you got to Delta, you talked extensively about like selection process, and you were talking about the selection process yesterday with having to eat frogs and different things. How do you assess? I mean, do you know if a guy's going to be able to pass before you meet him, or like how does that process when you're like are there certain acumens, or there's certain traits that you look for when you're trying to recruit new team members or people that you think might be potentially make it through the pipeline?
Yeah, this is easy. You tell everyone go now is the best job I ever had. You're stupid for being wherever the fuck you think you are right now. A. B, I don't know what the fuck they select. So go now. They might pick you. They may not. And then like, look, I told my kids this when they joined the Army, but this is true about selection. The stories you hear about selection is from the guys who failed and went back, because you didn't hear the real story, because those guys disappeared. How do I know? Because that's what happens. I disappeared and I never got to talk to my friends again, right? And then I'd see them years later like, dude, you're in the Army? Like, what do you mean? Am I in the Army? We're in a war zone. Why else would I be here? I've never seen a dude look like you.
Did you ever have a situation where like somebody that you'd worked with and then you disappear, and then like, a couple of years later you're somewhere in Afghanistan and you ran into somebody and they're like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah, all the time. You know what I mean? Like, that happened to me. And then I just got back from my solo mission. I had a huge beard. I'm in the chow hall and I just sit alone and no one sits by me, because just leave guys like me alone. That's what they do. The Rangers ain't going to sit at a table by me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just sit alone. And then I was sitting there and like I seen like an old Ranger like guy that had been my boss years ago. Like, he's like, where the fuck have you been? I'm like, wouldn't you like to know? You know what I mean? He was like, holy shit, you're still in the Army? I'm like, it appears so, and he's like, if you need anything, me and the boy, Rangers, where me and the boys are here. It's like, if I need something, they won't be calling you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not who's coming to save me, but thank you anyway, and he's just like, well, okay, happened to me all the time. And a lot of times, like, before like wearing beards was like cool, you know, like why did I have a beard? Because some guys can't grow it, you know, like, and some guys have to grow it, you know, because some guys are baby faced, you know. So, but before the beard days, like that really freaked people out. The grooming thing was like huge for Army guys to get over, especially the special forces types. Like, you can't grow that and be in a uniform. Like, well, yeah, the Army says I can. You know what I mean? It's just you didn't know that because you don't read anything the Army puts out. Because why would you do that?
Mm-hmm. He called everything would be what they call an exception to policy. Yeah. And so these guys were covered under an exception to policy for a lot of those things.
Yeah. Mm. Same with them, right? From the regular kind of Navy fleet guys. And the same with MARSOC, right? Yeah. Exception to policy, right?
So from 9/11 and the jump, and when we started on that, I mean, you saw this kind of breadth of war, and the different changes in leadership, from Bush, from Obama, and different generals came in and out. Like how does that change the mission and the directive where you have now all of a sudden the commander in chief? I mean, I felt like with Bush happened. I mean, 9/11 happened on his watch, and there was this kind of feeling of we're going to go punish the world for what happened. Whereas then Obama comes in, and there's even though Obama fucking probably had more drone strikes than anybody else and was pretty fucking aggressive. I mean, but there was obviously that changing and then different stuff. How did your specific mission, boots on the ground, change over the course of these different administrations, or did it at all?
Well, it's always different a little bit, right? Somehow it's always different, right? And it's the unit's job, or whatever unit it is, their job to kind of maintain this is what we do. But if what you're doing is justified when they go to brief, it could be the stupidest person ever, could be the president, but it's like, hey, we got this guy. This is the time we do this. How about you say yes? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, right? And I think that's why Obama had more drone strikes, because be like, hey, we're going to hit these targets. Okay, we'll hit them. I forgot to tell you, we're launching 28,000 rockets. You know what I mean? I kind of left that out of the briefing, and you said yes, right? So it always changes a little bit. But, if you're doing the work, there's missions out there, and there's stuff that always needs to be done. We will never run out of special operations work, in my opinion. Never.
One of your colleagues wrote a great book called Where Have All the Heroes Gone? Jeff Teagues, and I only got to meet Jeff for 45 minutes over a drink, but he said something that really solidified it for me just on the mindset. He's like, we're commandos. We just live for the hunt, as long as the hunt is justified.
Right.
But once you know who the enemy is, the enemy's been defined. He's like, just get out of our way and let us hunt. And that was the mindset. Didn't matter the place, didn't matter the enemy. Again, as long as it was justified. But this is what these guys do for a living, and they're freaking good at it. If you give them the trust and the leeway to go out and do what they're designed to do. And that was a constant ebb and flow for just the military as a whole, because, hey, something bad would happen. It would make the front page, and then the guys would have to pull back a little. And that's just human nature of covering your ass. And you would see that they would give him more rope to go do what these guys did well. And he lived in the heydays. I was still on the sidelines as a recon Marine and young team guy, but just growing up off of the stories of what you guys did in Tora Bora in the early days of Afghanistan, and the fact that these guys were doing 3 hits a night in JSOC, where they would take the helicopters, go hit. And again, these are the stories I grew up on. You'd come back, having captured and killed bad guy. They would hand you new GRGs. They would brief it on the spot. Does that sound accurate? And then just go hit another target to get on the little birds and fly back out.
Yeah. Some nights 10 a night. Who cares? Let's go. And then my squadron got the espresso machine. Like that made for a lot of interesting nights when the guys were able to make a ton of espresso before we'd roll. You know what I mean? Like, I had one of my guys loved espresso. I'd be like, how many espressos you have? He'd be like, 7. I'd be like, tell me the truth. 13. Okay, you're ready. Let's go. I think you can do this, right? But we didn't want to sit in the house. And the nights where like we were sitting in the house, like my bosses, when I this started when I was like a mid-level kind of new guy. My bosses, like if there was nothing to do, we're gonna get drunk and fuck up the house. So your options are give us more fucking targets, or we're gonna fuck up the house. And like the commanders are like, we'll have you a grid in like 10 minutes. And my boss would be like, okay, I'll wait for it right here. And he'd be like, go get the guys ready. And I'd be like, okay, boss, right? And then, but we would, man, we'd have 10 a night. It doesn't matter what happened on that last one. This is a new one. Like, and then, also is, I don't know who said it, but I'm trying to remember who said it. I don't remember who said it, but basically it's like no matter how many targets we hit today, we're not going to win this. We don't got the time. We don't got enough people. You know what I mean? So it's like you're on a timeline. With all this, you're on a timeline. You're on a political timeline. And then we knew like we don't got enough time for this. You know what I mean? This takes time. Like these things aren't, catching someone in 10 days or something like, and that happens in the world when this guy's like the fifth guy to be replaced, right? Who replaced Zarqawi? That guy lasted like 3 months. AAM, who was after him? That guy didn't last long. You know what I mean? Like, so once you get them kind of on their heels, they're easier to get, right? However, when these guys ain't been got yet and they're running and you're trying to figure this out, like it can be difficult and it takes time. And like, I equate it to like, these TV shows these days, like this should be a TV show. It's like, you don't know when it's going to pop. How you make a TV show out of that? You don't know how many seasons it would take. You know what I mean? Like you could never script this because there's times where it's like, well, it's all happening right now. And there's times where it's like, are we going to do shit? Or like, where'd all the targets?
Was the whole deal trying to like work up the chain where you're like, hey, we take this guy to try. So you have like kind of almost like a board of faces and you're trying to figure out how to get to the fucking top of the Bonneville and every guy is trying to get you to the next piece.
So I always equate it to like a sweater, right? If I wanted to unravel like say the left arm off a sweater, if I picked the right thread, the like left arm would come off. But you got to pick that thread. Well, how many threads are there? Fuck if we know. Start pulling them. You know what I mean? Like we got to figure out what part of what, where are we, right? So you just have to pull these threads. And we used to say all the time, like I think the intelligence agencies are like, this guy failed the polygraph. You know what I mean? Like, don't go check this out. Well, that's how they got Uday Kuse, right? But it's like, okay, we're in the Army. Right? We don't get paid to trust your polygraph. We get paid to go knock on that door and see what the fuck is there, right? So we would go anyway, no matter what. But I do feel like the beginning of the war was special operations supposed to be intelligence drives operations, right? But there's a massive hole in all types of intelligence in the beginning of the war. So operations was driving intelligence to drive more operations, which was just, that's why we had to hit 10 targets a night.
So in terms of like, because the terrain in Afghanistan is so varied, you'd have like villages in this and you got fucking dudes up in caves. How does that like navigate? Like I thought just looking at the landscape and the topography, I'm like, fuck, like how do you go take targets when you don't know if this guy's fucking in a cave at 10,000 feet or at some local, valley river?
That's where fucking armies go to die.
Oh, I mean, what they call Afghanistan, the
graveyard of empires,
graveyard of nations. Yeah.
What is it about this piece of shit, like little piece of land, mountain region that all of these massive empires have literally shattered themselves on the rocks to try to take?
And the rocks. It's the rocks. Shattered. You said it. It's the rock.
But I mean, like
it's their gross national product. Rock.
Like, what did we think that the Russians couldn't figure out? I mean, I know why we supported, Al Qaeda and Obama. I mean, Osama bin Laden. The enemy of our enemy is our friend kind of a deal, and we supported them in their fight against Russia. And then that obviously comes back and bites us in the ass. But when you go through and you look over the course, I mean, all of these different individuals that have tried to go take it, like cannot fucking take it. But yet we have the hubris to think, let's go in there and fucking smash these people.
Well, we were going to go in regardless because of 9/11.
That's a yes from me. But I'm saying yes to your question.
The hubris. There was a total mismanagement of the war. And this is my personal opinion. is, and especially in the wake of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, is he said there's a political timeline. Patriotism has a shelf life. And you've got to be very aggressive while you have that patriotism and that political support behind you. But I don't think we prepared the American public that this wasn't going to be a 2-decade fight. This was going to be a century-long fight.
I mean, how long? How long did it take us to get Kuwait? Was that like 2 days?
Yeah,
100 hours.
Yeah, it was like 100 hours. So I think as Americans, we're like, wow, we got Kuwait back, and then how long did it take us to go through Iraq?
So you look at the tyranny of
like a week.
Yeah,
the tyranny of distance and the tyranny of terrain in Afghanistan versus a desert and urban environment. You look at what Israel's doing to Gaza right now. Hell, they just took out Yahya Sinwar, which was a huge, massive strike. It's basically like their equivalent of getting UBL for 9/11.
Yeah.
But those urban fights, while the casualty rates are significantly higher, because you can stand in the middle of the street, do a 360, 1,000 windows are looking at you, and the enemy could be in any one of those 1,000 windows. Gaza is unique because they have a complex tunnel system, but with the mountains of the caves, desert. In the mountains were, especially in Konar. That terrain was significant. There were valleys when my first deployment to Afghanistan. There were valleys in Konar that Americans had still never been in. That's how drastic the terrain is, and that's how it just complicates the fight. And it's their backyard.
We went places we would have to tell them we're not the Russians because they thought we were still the Russians, and they'd be like, "No, we're Americans." Like, well, why are you guys here? You guys fighting the Russians?
Yes.
And like, okay, yeah, you know what I mean? But like, they had no idea. They hadn't seen anybody since the Russians were there in some of them places.
At which point, I guess through the entirety of the war, Osama bin Laden was like the primary target. Like, how did that chase? In terms of you guys going out, was it always like, this is the dude we're going after and everybody's working to him?
When we went after him, I think that was very true. And I think somewhere the Pentagon shifted to fucking Saddam was bad guy number one. And I think they focused on the deck of cards and threw every resource they could at that. I personally think it's because the Army doesn't want to fight in the fucking mountains, and the Army can drive fucking tanks through Baghdad. So the Army wanted to play in Iraq. The Army wanted nothing to do with Afghanistan and just gave it to the Special Forces. So it's like, you're giving it to the smallest force of the Army. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of work to be done. Like, it takes bodies, So when you give it to the smallest number of bodies, of course, this is going to take longer. So I think at some point, bin Laden went down on the priority list. Now, if he surfaced at any moment and the boys went and fucking schwacked him, good. But right now, it's Saddam and, fucking Uday and Qusay. And I think so. I think it was and it was always priority one, probably on the books. But the reality is I think there was just that shift to Iraq some point.
One of the things I find especially fascinating is the stories about Saddam Hussein's legendary brutality.
Oh, yeah.
And just the stories of them going in and finding literally thousands of dollars worth of half-burned $100 bills that he would light cigars with, or this. Just like the stories of his just the opulence and the legendary shit, but just the brutality. Was there anything that you saw that where you were like, this is a serious fucking dictator like we've never seen?
Yeah. So I don't remember how it went down. It was a long time ago, but we got the Uday and Qusay had these lions, right? You ever hear of the lions? We gave them to the Army. They had them behind chain link in the middle of fucking buildings we gave the Army next door, right? So they're 6-foot chain link that Army guys put up to keep the lions. And the lions were just chill all the time, man. Didn't do shit, right? And then one day I was over there. I had to do something big Army headquarters, walk next door, talk to, I don't even know who or for what, but I had to walk next door. So I go over there. I was kind of just standing, checking out the lions, because me and the lions had a little bit of history, you know what I'm saying? So this lady walks by in a burqa with little kids, and the lions went nuts. And that's when I knew these motherfuckers were fucking sick. You know what I mean? Fucking bastards.
Women and children.
Yeah, because they didn't give a shit about men. So they were feeding the lions, women and children, and every time one walked by, like that chain link, I didn't think it was going to hold most of the time, but it did somehow. But that's when I realized, fucking, they're feeding these lions, women and children, because that's what they go nuts at. They don't go nuts when I'm over at the cage. You don't even give a shit about me ever. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I knew, like, this is fucking real. You know what I mean? And then you hear stories like that. They feed them to the, you know, them big. The palaces have like the water feature, right? Is like having a big penis in the desert, right? The massive water feature, but they'd have these like big fish that would eat people in them. And like army guys would fish with like bagels on rope and catch them. I seen a guy, a bagel and a rope one day, catch one of them big ass carp like looking fish, but them fish ate people. I think they throw like, you know, the lions would get half and the fish would get half. And I bet if they drain them lakes around some of them palaces, like the Perfume Palace or some of them legendary rape palaces, like I bet they find all kinds of fucking bones, DNA. Who the fuck knows? You know what I mean?
Was it because they were complete fucking sociopaths, psychopaths? Or was it the fact that like that's the only way that you're going to govern those people is by just such brute force brutality?
I think it's twofold. I think like Saddam had the fucking Middle East on lock. We didn't have no trouble with Iran. We didn't have like, so what Saddam did was worked. I think Saddam was effective. However, I think you
like
had
in the north, they like the Sunnis and the Sunnite, like they would get all fucking ramped up, and he would go mustard gas and kill like 200,000 of them.
The Kurdish,
yeah. And he would like mustard gas 200,000, and then they would chill the fuck out. And like he would just kill these people indiscriminately and be like, chill out, we're gonna,
but I think he was really effective, like the military, the Republican Guard, like, you know, he had like Sunnis as the commanders of the Shia brigades, and like he was really smart how he did it. However, I think with his sons, you had cocaine and fame and fucking money to fucking dictators. I think I would want to party with those guys, you know what I mean? Besides the rape and the weird shit, I bet they went to all the parties here in the States back in the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, they were spoiled rich kids, but imagine if those spoiled rich kids are fucking dictator sons, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know? And then imagine like, and then it's always like the classic parent fucking thing. Is the dad going to put him down? He's a rabid dog. Of course not. Don't do that again. You know what I mean? But they were fucking horrible. They were bastards. I believe they were evil and needed to die, especially his sons. You know what I mean? There's some of the shit they did, like fucking rooms with like hooks in the ceiling to hang people, like weird shit. You know what I mean? Tons of weird shit.
So you go in the palace and secret, like there was like legitimately things like out of a fucking meat locker.
Yeah. I mean, I never seen any, like, by the time we get to the palace, it'd be, like, empty. I didn't see any people chained or, you know what I mean? Like, but, like, you know, that's what they did in some of them basement rooms. That's where they kept them lions, you know? You know what I mean? Like, there's fucking shit going on in some of them fucking concrete hallways, you know?
Fuck, dude.
Brutal. They needed to die. Them two, Uday and Qusay, in my opinion, needed to die.
And then how did they expire?
One of my the 2 troop in my squadron got them. I just got back, like literally we'd all just got back that night. And they're like, I had to go back to the airfield and do my day job, which sucked, by the way. And then like read reports all day, right? But so I go back to the airfield, and then the 2 troop shows up at the airfield. I'm like, yo, where you guys going? They're like, going to Mosul, some fucking Saddam fucking sighting. Like, literally, dude, we just got in, and the troop sergeant major, my buddy Will, was like, we're up. You guys were up yesterday. And it was like, fuck yeah, we were up yesterday and had fucking missions yesterday. You know what I mean? So I was like, fucking, you guys got this. He's like, you want to come? And I'm like, fuck, man, I got too much shit here. Like, fucking good luck, boys. And it's like, 6 hours later, I got to fucking drag Uday and Qusay off an airplane. Like, fucking missed out on that one, didn't I? You know what I mean? But it was just like, there's so much shit going on. Like, I couldn't possibly volunteer for another mission. Like, we just got back from doing another fucking 10 or whatever. I mean, in the Saddam days, like, we could clear 100, 200 buildings in a night. Like, my first Saddam sighting, we fucking Ken Block it in a white Toyota truck with a fucking map through Baghdad. I found the house with the fucking map of Baghdad. My squadron sergeant major was mad that we were fucking 30 seconds late or whatever it was, like not precision timing from the snipers, right? But it was like, yo, I made it through Baghdad with a map. I'm navigating. A buddy of mine's driving. I'm like, third traffic circle out at the 9. I don't know. We get there, and it was like, we got like, I don't know, a dozen, 20 guys, right? And in one house. And they all had the Saddam mustache, and it was like a fucking Saddam look-alike convention.
Kind of like we saw Ricky Bobby yesterday.
Yeah, that Ricky Bobby is the same thing, and you're like, short, fat Saddam, super tall Saddam. That guy looks like Saddam. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, well, whoever called this in, I understand why they called. You know what I mean? However, it's the most popular look in Iraq then. You know what I mean? That fucking Saddam mustache. And then not that they all look the same, but like they all looked like Saddam for fucking sure, in my opinion. It's just, like how they have the multiverse, like there was 20 versions of Saddam. We got to talk to them all. Like,
how do you figure out who's Saddam and who's not Saddam?
Super easy, man. I did this my whole career. Who you want to know about doesn't fucking matter, right? You get a guy, you segregate him. This is easy. I look him in the face, and I fucking poke him in the chest. And I was like, fucking Saddam. And a dude would be like, I know no Saddam. Like, get this guy out of here. That's how I do it, right? And then like in Afghanistan, I'd look at a guy and be like, fucking Bin Laden. And a dude would be like, I'm like, this guy's Bin Laden. And finally, when he understands I'm calling him Bin Laden, he's like, no Bin Laden, no Bin Laden. Ahmed, no Bin Laden. Like, okay, is Ahmed on the list? Yeah? Okay, get this guy out of here. Bring the next one. And I just accuse him of being some, Zarqawi days. This guy's Zarqawi. And like, these guys know you're going to kill Zarqawi, right? So this is Zarqawi. No, Zarqawi.
Yeah, like, but isn't everybody going to say that? Even Zarqawi going to say that?
No, they admit to being them.
Oh.
Yeah, they play the role. Saddam played the role.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. I figured they were all kind of cowards at the end.
Well, yeah, of course. But like they'll play the role till the end. That's part of the gig. You know what I mean? Like, you got to read the fine print, baby. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was there all along.
Wow. Fuck, dude. So obviously every group that is kind of Special Operations Command thinks that they're like tip of the spear. How does that kind of whole thing melt where you're like at Delta and you got, guys at DevGru and 75th and all that? Like, how is there like inter-operational works or different groups kind of put in like different, like, hey, you guys are doing this and we're doing this, but you guys cross over? How does that all kind of
there's
work?
Habitual relationships. Like I was always with those guys, right? I was at your guys all the time. So like there's habitual squadrons are supposed to work together, habitual Ranger battalions. That way, like, you're not going with new guys all the time. However, you could go with, say there's a surge, you could be with anybody. Or like there was missions where these guys would come over to us, right? And then like we're all kind of like kitting up together, waiting to go somewhere all together. You know what I mean? So I would say like there's a lot of interoperability, but as for tip of the spear, no offense, but like it's the fucking Delta Force, right? Only because they're sustainable, self-sustainable, right? And then there's everybody else, in my opinion. And then why do I say that? It's not that the SEAL Team 6 by mission shouldn't be the tip of the spear and everything. It's they kind of don't have the support for long-term war. And then having to get, during the war years, they had to get augmentees from JSOC. And JSOC is just getting people from the Army. Like, how good do you think that help is? You need dedicated professional help, which is like where I think most places are these days with the intelligence brigades. And so back in the day, like, I think it was the unit. Nowadays, like, all of JSOC is the tip of the spear, aren't they? You know what I mean? And then, but everybody's got special operations. And I think in this country we probably have too many special operations, and it's probably a little fragmented and always has been. But as for tip of the spear, really all that means is, who do we support logistically? And then next is, JSOC can ask anyone in the Army at any time, like, we need 58,000 bodies. And the Army's like, okay. And that's the way it works. And that's the way it's supposed to work. And there's a chain of command for that, right? So I think that's really how it works, to be honest.
How do you manage fear? I mean, there's kind of different, kind of like at least I think like different shades of fear, like the fear of the unknown, the fear of let's say combat and death. I mean, like in terms of like managing fear, and I feel like the more opportunities you have to do something, like I'll just give you my shitty example. I would see young guys, young NFL players, and you could see like they were like the fear in their eyes of going out there and doing this. And they asked me, and I'm like, I have no fear of going out there. Am I nervous to do a good job? But I've also had many opportunities, like many, bites at the apple, swings at the bat, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So was it something early on that you kind of had to manage fear, and then as you kind of got more indoctrinated into it, like fear wasn't as much of a factor, but then bringing in new guys, helping them kind of manage it? Like how does that whole process?
At some point, I'd been just fucking rocketed and mortared and shot at so many times, I just didn't give a fuck anymore. Like I just, you know what I mean? Like they're like, get up, they see me, I'm down, bitch, I'm walking to that next truck. If he's gonna fucking pop me in the head, it's gonna be my day. So there came a point where like I just didn't give a fuck anymore, and I think that made me way more effective on a risk scale on different tasks. However, like I would tell anybody is, this helicopter ride into wherever the fuck we're going, you're going to have 1,000 emotions today, right now, today. You're going to have 1,000 emotions, right? Do you stick with the ones that make you angry or sad, or you're trying to stick with the ones that make you happy? Because you're going to have 1,000 emotions in that fucking helicopter. When you get off, don't be the fucking coward. You know what I mean? So it's a wave. You got to ride it. And, and then once you learn to surf, riding that wave doesn't become so bad. You know what I'm saying? So you got to learn to surf first, and you got to understand this is waves. And I think that's really the way it works. Another thing that really helps is fucking fatigue. You want to not give a fuck? Just be tired doing this shit all the time, because we do this shit fucking 100 times a fucking day. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just got back from last night. We fucking raided 100 buildings last night. We're on call this morning. Oh, another Saddam sighting. Like, okay, so this spawned another 28 buildings. So this takes us to dinner time. But however, well, we got to start planning after dinner for tonight's 10 targets. You know what I mean? So it didn't stop. So I think fatigue also plays a role in the give a fuck meter. And I think last, it's like fear is healthy. Learn to harness it. Like your stomach, you get butterflies, that's a fucking butterfly cage. Let them fly around, right? Like I think you have to learn to harness it, and not only harness it, but just accept it, And then I think over time you become, anti-fragile, in the sense that like whether you just don't give a fuck or how this is going to go down. I've seen this before, I'll get a couple guys over here, we got this, right? Whatever it is. And I think last, it becomes a game of 0 to like 10, I think. What does that mean? No opposition tonight. We're going to stay at a 0 all night long. We're going to snatch people. We're going to try not to fire a shot. We're not going to make any noise, right? We use light discipline. We're in and out as quick as possible. We're going to do this as much as possible. However, if someone has to shoot once, you better be ready to kill the whole fucking village. You know what I mean? Because if you think that gunfire doesn't, and then we see this nightly, is there'll be a guy fucking running out of the next door house with a fucking wheel gun in Iraq because he's got 6 hot daughters. He heard that gunshot. He thinks fucking rape in his house, so he's going to defend his house. You know what I mean? Now, this guy runs up on you with a wheel gun. You know what I mean? You just drop the neighbor, right? So now you drop that neighbor. Well, everybody heard that gunshot. So now the whole neighborhood's coming to the fight. And this is like these neighborhoods, Sadr City, Ramadi, right? You'd start the gunfight and then have to slip out of there while they just fight each other, because then they wouldn't know who was shooting anymore, and you just leave. But it was a 1 to 10 thing of, you better be ready to execute this to the fucking nth degree right now, or let's try to get all this done without any of that. And that was the goal. And like, you know, I think people don't misunderstand. Like, people are like, you know, they want to watch combat footage, but it's like, you watch some of this combat footage, there's a lot of boring shit happening from outer space all the fucking time. But, you know, that ain't what it feels like on the ground when you're in one of these situations.
Was there one situation where you thought, oh, fuck, I'm not getting out of this alive?
Oh, fucking so many, man.
Just too many to count?
I fucking wrote that check so many fucking times, you know what I mean? And only to be like, and then be like with other dudes like, yo, let's never do that again. How about that? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, fuck yeah, we'd never do that again, right? So many times it's not even, especially in the mortar and rocket days. And then it'll get to the point where it's like, okay, am I going to get to a bunker, or do I just fucking go back to sleep and try to get some sleep and don't give a fuck about these mortars? You know what I mean? Because if one lands in my bunk and I was sleeping, I wouldn't know anyway. So you just kind of like, I don't know if you don't give a fuck, you just don't care anymore, right? And I think that's the first layer of it. But this also, I think, leads to burnout later too.
Oh, there definitely is they call it executive burnout. There's a burnout that takes place, but fear, you know, as the saying goes, there is no courage in the absence of fear. It's the truth. But with what John is saying is, as you are exposed to more combat and you take more hits on the chin, you somewhat become inoculated. And it's not overconfidence, it's experience. Experience, I think, tampons down that fear. And these guys do a great job of coming back from every success and failure in debriefing, hot wash, after action review, the living crap out of every single mission in order to, you know, transfer knowledge that he may have gained in one room that another guy didn't, and arm them with the tools to be more lethal and effective on the battlefield. So that after action review is like the key to our success in watching, you know, again, going to John's point of hitting 100 buildings, getting back at like 4 a.m. in the morning. These guys don't go to sleep. They may go grab some chow, grab some water. They'll reload their mags, put their radios on the charger, but then they go into a room for 2 hours. And from the second the mission was handed to them, to all the mission planning and preparation, to the actual execution of the mission, they are walking through each phase, and each person is speaking up to their roles and responsibilities during that piece of the entire mission, from planning to execution. And they're getting better with each iteration. And I think that tampons that fear. But, and John, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. The one fear that never goes away, that's always there, is that, please God, don't let me fail my team tonight. Don't let me fail the guys to my left and right. That fear, and that's, I'll speak for me, that never went away. And it was the one prayer I said on the helo ride in. Please God, don't let me let the boys down.
That's real. I agree with that. 100%.
He's like, that's why I started going up by myself.
Yeah. Only got to worry about me, you know what I mean? And I'm going to tell you this, you think they're going to cut my dick off and stuff in my mouth while I'm out there alone? There'd be a lot of dead bodies around me before then, you know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, I never wanted to let anyone down. Never. I mean, that's a horrible feeling, I think.
Yeah. And I don't think the guys would come down on you for making a mistake. It's that the individual would never let it go. It's that sort of self-reflection. It would be a burden on them for life. The guys understand mistakes are going to be made, and you can recover from all mistakes. But if you failed to clear a corner and one of your buddies was killed, they know you're going to be your own worst critic on that. They're going to bring it up. It's going to be a long discussion, but they know you're going to be your own worst critic, and you'll never let that go for life.
I used to call that a self-correcting mistake, and nothing I can say to you.
What about when they found Saddam in that spider hole?
Yeah.
Like what was that? Was that like a fucking drainage ditch with like a straw? Like,
no, it was a made to be like some type of fucking hideout for the fucking that crazy fuck. Yeah. Imagine this, man. And he told the guys that jumped down in the hole, like, I'm Saddam Hussein, I surrender or whatever. And they're like, fuck you, bitch. I'd have fucking lumped that dude up. Although, hold on, real talk. Let me back up a little bit. If I'd have been down in the hole and he'd have been like, my name is Saddam, I surrender, you'd have heard pop, pop. That's it. And I've been like, man, he went for that G18, you know what I mean? He skinned that smoke wagon and played that game. Because here's the deal, right? Like, you can't take a guy like that. Like, and same with Bin Laden. You can't bring him to New York City or the fucking Hague. Like, what the fuck do you even do with a guy like that, right? So, if it was me, I think my squadron, Saddam, there would have been no hanging later.
Well, I think Israel said that with Yahya Sinwar. It was purely a kill mission.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that was said, but you're also creating a martyr.
Yeah.
When you bring that guy, you're galvanizing the next jihadist that will come into the country.
Well, I mean, obviously they kill Bin Laden, and then like, what did we do? Like, didn't they like bury him at sea? And like I'm always wondering if that guy's on a fucking island somewhere with Jeffrey Epstein hanging out having drinks.
He hit the bottom of the ocean. I know people. You know what I'm saying? Like, dead.
So when I was going through your bio, you're well known to have like combat proficiency and like a sniper expertise. Mm-hmm. Has the role of the sniper, I mean, obviously it has evolved in modern warfare, to the point where, it's like one of the most powerful kind of pieces for this. Yeah. But like, how is that that role kind of evolved over time, and how did you see it? I mean, not only the increase in probably ability, but weapons in this. I mean, it just feels like that's one of those things that just is an unfair advantage that we wanted to take we had.
Yeah, there's always a huge psychological advantage to the sniper on the battlefield, right? But really, in the unit, the sniper role is more of, in my squadron anyway, the senior guy who's the jack of all trades. Not only could I take some long shots, but I just follow in the back with the assaulters, and I'm a 400-pound gorilla in the house. You know what I'm saying? So really for me, the sniper role, I always seen it as the advanced operator or the more experienced operator. And then I'll tell you, you get fucking 5 or 6 guys like that in a squadron, especially as leadership with a couple new guys. Yo, bring the horde. We'll kill all comers today, guaranteed. Now tell them to drive their trucks over. You know what I'm saying? Because you're just a multiplier. Any weapon, anything, a guy can just pick it up. We need that anti-tank rocket. Hold on, let me get this first hit. Where you want it? In the hatch? So I always seen the sniper role as the advanced assaulter, the advanced commando role. And this is just skills you do in also with all the other tasks you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Now, the singleton role is a little different in the sense that you're your own medic. Bring some shit. You know what I'm saying? You're your own radio guy. Fill your fucking radio. You're your own weapons guy. What are you going to carry, right? So you have to do it all yourself. But I do believe it's just really the advanced skill and the more advanced guys. And I think it's the nature of warfare is having a guy a little older, a little mature on the battlefield. In the beginning, I thought the Rangers were kind of weak, and they later unfucked themselves, but in the beginning of Afghanistan, I thought the Ranger Battalion sucked. We hated even having them around. It was just more problems than we needed, And then later they got way better, right? But what I'm saying is when they sucked, it wasn't an asset to us, but me with 5 or 6 Rangers, you here, over here, you here, they always listen to us. And then instantly we'd roll in 2 or 3 of us. We could take over that fucking Ranger platoon. And the Ranger lieutenants in that at the time fucking hated it, right? Because who are you to come in to boss my guys around? But I'm running a perimeter and we're about to smoke these fools. So fucking get ready. And if you're not, get the fuck out of go somewhere else. I don't even give a fuck where you go. So you take these advanced guys And it's just such a fucking force multiplier. Every guy is his own fucking army, like so much harder to fight. And I think that should be where special operations is and or goes in the future. You know what I mean? But these, all these skills, you know, should be like, it's taught over time. It's experience. This guy moves up, you know what I mean? And then when I was like a new guy in a squadron as an assaulter, I'm like, man, the fucking snipers, we called them golf club snipers because they were all older than us, only by a couple years generally. But like, it seemed like a lot more than, you know, like look at the old guys, right? And then when I was an old guy, it was like, oh, you think you can beat me in the house, new guy? Like, fucking grab your pistol and follow me, see if you can keep up, you know? And it was like, wow. When I became an old guy, it was like, wow, we thought the old guys were kind of lazy, but really, like, these guys knew way more than you. You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of like in jits, they're just real efficient.
Yeah, they just kind of are well-rounded in all of it. You know, like in jits, they got the takedown. You know, they got the jits. They got the wrestling piece I handled. They got the, you know, so... I think the advanced sniper, right, is really like an advanced assaulter who has just more skills that anywhere he goes is just a multiplier for anybody who could be around him. Doesn't matter. Regular Army, Rangers, didn't matter. Like, you know, we'll set this shit up, spread the guys out, like, man, you know, and then just wait, and then do what we did best, kill all comers.
The snipers have, and in the wake, I don't know if you read this, the Marine Corps has eliminated snipers again. So they've gotten rid of snipers.
I thought like the Marine Scout sniper was like a real deal.
No, it is. So if you look at the evolution of snipers, I mean, go back to World War I. Some guys who were really good shots would get some additional training, and they would get a sniper rifle, and they would demoralize the enemy. Snipers are demoralizing. It's a psychological piece as well. Then they got rid of them. Then World War II comes around. They stand up a curriculum. They create snipers again. They get rid of them. They create a formal schoolhouse in Vietnam. I mean, you probably grew up reading the stories about snipers, Army, Marine Corps in Vietnam.
Like the Carlos Hathcock and all that.
Exactly. And there was a ton. And these guys would be sent out in what they call partners, pig partners. And it would just be two of them in the jungle for 3 weeks. And just, you know, what a lot of people don't realize is that probably the 80% of being a sniper is special reconnaissance. Mm-hmm. You had to do more field sketches and observing villages than actually taking shots and then reporting or sending those sketches back. And that has changed with the advent of, you know, all these assets in the air that provide a better picture than any sniper
mapping of
can.
The entire planet helps a ton. You ain't got to find this place. We already know what it looks like.
But the Marine Corps will bring snipers back eventually. I think there is still a schoolhouse on the side for MARSOC and the Force Recon guys, that there is still an official sniper schoolhouse. But those guys are professional gunmen trained in field craft and high-speed marksmanship that deliver precision fire and demoralize the enemy. And there will always be a place for snipers. And I mean, there was even enemy snipers during the Global War on Terror that were wreaking havoc on Army or Marine Corps units. And they demoralized units, and vice versa for our snipers. But snipers are a invaluable part of war, and just the American history shows they get rid of them, they bring them back, they get rid of them, they bring them back. They should be here to stay, and I don't know why the Marine Corps made that decision. I'm not totally read up on why they did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the Marines would get rid of them. It seems like that's one of the skills that people join the Marines for. You know what I mean? Like, but I think the traditional sniper role, like the Vietnam guys, like they were just rednecks, kids that you learned how to use rifles. Like, wow, you actually hit the 300-yard target, kid. Here, let me give you a bolt action rifle. Like, oh, this is what I was used to, Sarge. Like, good job, country kid. And then, like, that's how a lot of, years ago, I went to U.S. Army sniper school, like the real Army one as a Ranger, and because I was a Ranger sniper. And Carlos Hathcock would like talk to the classes back then. It was all the white feather stuff. Like, man, I was all into that shit, you know, only to like in Tora Bora, like we took 50 cal shots at machine guns, fucking mountaintop to mountaintop my first 10 days. They'd be like, yeah, I think all that stuff was bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, this is way different shit than any of that shit, you know? Yeah, like he talked to their school. The Army was big into that shit back then. I kind of giggled when you said that.
That's what they knew.
Yeah.
That's what they knew.
Yeah.
And the military has a tendency of what we call fighting the last war. Yeah. And maybe why you make that reference to Rangers is they were so prepared on an airfield seizure. But, you know, I remember talking to your generation of guys that when the war, you know, kicked off, they're like, yeah, we were prepping for the next World War III, and we had to speed up to the speed of war. We didn't have our proverbial shit together, but we got our shit together very quickly in the early days of the GWAT.
Well, what did we learn? I mean, over the course of this 20-year global war on terror, you know, we go in, you know, 9/11 happens, guns a-blazing. Yeah. You know, I hear stories of guys showing up in like, you know, jungle camo, you know, in Afghanistan. I mean, like all shit's all fucked up, and then we get pretty high speed to having this botched, you know, fucking pullout that we ended up having, leaving all the stuff. I mean, like zero preparation. And, you know, like the comment I heard recently was like, well, how do we pull out of there? I'm like, strategically, like disabling all the stuff, like not leaving all the shit.
Blow it in place.
Yeah, just blow it all up. I mean, why, if we said we were going to leave, why don't we turn the whole fucking place into a parking lot?
Love that idea.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, but is it the idea that there's some moral high ground that the administration is trying to reach, that like, oh, this is like my predecessors were, you know, these fucking savages, and now we have to try to have this, you know, moral high ground? Or is it just
the rules of war? The rules of war is what they're trying to follow, and keeping our honor clean as part of the Marine Corps hymn. But and John, I'm sorry to jump in here, but well, yeah, technology, war will speed up technology. You look at World War II and all the technological uses that the public now uses is the same for the GWAT. I mean, you look at the gear that these guys started with in 2001 to what an average Ranger unit is wearing today. It's drastically different. The plates are feather light, stronger.
Helmet weighs nothing.
And you used to wear a helmet where you'd have to fit it over the peltors, and it would cause this headache, and now they're attached on the side. I mean, technology advanced greatly, but if you look, here's my perspective on two things. One, you brought it up earlier, Saddam had Iran on lockdown, and we've seen this. You remove somebody like Saddam, and it's almost of the analogy of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
You created this vacuum for Al-Qaeda. Same thing with Gaddafi in Libya, created this vacuum. And when we did that, you strengthened Iran immensely. The other part is, you know, you talk about this hubris and this win hearts and minds concept, or counterinsurgency warfare, which is sort of the hearts and minds is sort of the center point of it. That works to a degree, but I don't think America was ready to be as lethal as it needed to be to wipe out an ideology. And then the fact that, you know, we never went into the FATA in Pakistan, which was a safe haven. The Pakis were doing nothing about it. I mean, it was just fighters would come into Afghanistan, and then they would pull back into the FATA, knowing that we couldn't chase them. So there was just a lot of things that we learned. We should have been a lot more lethal. At the end of the day, the people in the Middle East are not going to love Americans. That's just my perspective, in my opinion. And I think we're in a better state than we were post 9/11, immediately after. But you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, and Iran is the problem, is the cancer that just needs to be removed. And the fact that the Biden administration it's
fucking gave them all that money back.
Yeah, the Biden administration is putting verbal restraints on Israel not to strike any of their nuclear facilities. Everyone knows that what they're trying to do. They're trying to, you know, procure a nuclear weapon, which is, I mean, Iran has called Israel a one bomb solution. And until Iran is dealt with, you're going to continue to have these problems in the Middle East.
It feels like, just from my perception, that war has a shelf life, like you brought up earlier, that you got to almost go hard and go fast in the beginning and try to get it done as quick as possible, because it feels like the American public's temperament changes very quickly after a while. Like, oh, should we really be there? I mean, the fact that when we were at Fort Bragg recently, or we're working, there were guys there that were born after 9/11 that had no memory of this stuff. When 9/11 happened recently, we're sitting there watching all these different harrowing stories and, trying to explain it to the kids, and like, they can't fathom it. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember, turning on the TV and seeing the planes hit and that whole deal, and then hearing Bush get up and give that talk, which always felt a little surprising to me, that we're going to go out and fight the war on terror. I mean, there was no clear defined enemy. We were just going to go find all the bad guys and beat them up. I always thought that if you're going to go to warfare, or if you're going to go to war, declare war, you have to have a clear defined enemy with a clear defined idea of what success looks like.
I'll push back on you on that one. I think the enemy was clearly defined. The outcome, the desired end state, as we say, was not. And, if you wanted to remove Saddam, that's great. But at no point, and this is a proven failed mission, is nation rebuilding. The army is not in the business of building.
And democracy has never flourished in that part of the world. So what do you think, that you're going to basically instill American democracy in Iraq?
And that is the naivety that we have, is that we can pick up our constitutional republic model and put it on top of any nation in the Middle East, where it just doesn't work that way. In Afghanistan, there was no national pride. One valley doesn't care what happens in another valley. And quite frankly, they never see them. They never travel to see that other valley. There's no national pride. And that was just a misunderstanding stepping into that war, that we figured out over time, that these people don't care about a unified Afghanistan. They just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
So I'll actually try to ask you a relevant fitness training question. Once you guys got there, there's obviously a high premium put on, strength and power and just endurance, and, the stories you're telling me kind of go against everything we know about, physical human performance. I mean, you guys are sleep deprivated, only working at night, endless amounts of missions. I mean, like, the amount of stress and cortisol. I mean, talk about fucking painting the worst fucking physical picture for human performance, but you guys were still able to do that. Yeah. Do you feel that it was just out of sheer will, there was a genetic adaptation pre-selecting for certain individuals that had unique skill sets? Because if you were to try to ramp up performance for individuals that were doing the job that you were doing, it's next to impossible.
Right.
Because there was no sleep. Right. I mean, I was looking at his Whoop score yesterday, and like 0 deep sleep. And I was trying to explain it to him. Yeah, none. That like,
I go for weeks without deep or REM sleep.
So the problem is if you don't get REM or deep sleep, you don't make hormones. And he's like, well, that's not an issue. But I mean, this is
but I bet I don't make those hormones that we were talking about. I mean, I joked about it, but
I was thinking we got to plug you in Doc Parsley. I'm going to give you some of his sleep cocktail, see if we can help you a little bit. But
let's go. I need this shit.
Dude, you came to the right fucking place. This is what we do. But Doc Parsley ended up working with a lot of the SEALs, and he was a former SEAL who became the medical doc, and a lot of the problems that he figured out were that these guys were fucked up because they weren't sleeping at night. Yeah. And they were in these constant, like, never-ending cycles of forward operations. Yeah. How does, is there training time? Is there gyms? I mean, you guys are so busy. Like, where does like the strength and conditioning or is that even a factor? Like, hey, let's go bang some weights and get the fuck out of here.
No, runner types, right? Like those guys with good cardio. And those guys could go like a whole deployment, not do shit. We get back and they're still going to fucking run you to the ground, right? So you always get your physical specimens that like they can not do shit and still just be fucking awesome all the time. That wasn't me, man. In Iraq, I'd wake up before everybody and I'd do an hour cardio on a treadmill. And then I'd go lift weights, and then I'd go to dinner and then planning, right? And then I just kind of made it part of my routine. And I'm going to tell you, there's days I'm on the treadmill where I'm like a zombie, you know what I mean? But like, I knew like if I'm not doing this when I get back, right? Like I can't afford the setbacks, right? For me. So I always worked out. Now, Afghanistan, like, man, when I was in Terran Count, I took these artillery pieces and made the fucking best gym ever. We carried heavy shit around the parking lot. We had a pull-up bar. Like, we carried generators, you know what I mean? So, like, a lot of our workouts in the beginning of Afghanistan were, like, more like world's strongest man shit. Like, find something heavy. And it's like, well.
Those are great workouts.
Those are great workouts, man. Hey, I used to carry 245 ammo cans, 230 grain ball, and if you know, those cans are heavy, right? So I get my 245 cans, and I'd walk the park when I was in the fatwa. I'd walk around the parking lot carrying my 45 cans, and I'd just do it for hours. On days we didn't do anything, I'd just walk hours carrying them cans, right? And then finally one day, my CCT guy was like, yo, what's up with carrying those cans? And I'm like, them cans are my sanity. And he was like, I'm going to do them cans today. You know what I mean? And then he's out there in the parking lot walking circles, you know what I mean? And then, like, I know what the fucking Pakis are like. What the fuck are wrong with these Americans? They just walk around carrying bullets. What the fuck is wrong with these guys, right? But I don't know. You got to do something. Guys got to do something. And you can't do nothing. And you can't afford to just be a fucking sack of shit, because if you're not strong, you could blow a joint. You know what I mean? If you're not mobile, you could pull a muscle. If you're, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's all hand in hand and it's all connected. So no matter what, I would tell guys, stay with it, you know, and I would tell guys, do cardio and weights every day. Some guys would come in like after missions and work out, you know. I would go before. Yeah, I know. Like there's a couple nights when Timmy Kennedy was my new guy. There's like nights where we get back, I'd be like, yo, you want to do some rounds? And he'd be like, yeah. And I just meet him in the dojo, and like we'd go at it after missions, you know what I mean, for like a little while, just to round out the night. But you have to, whether you like it or not, you know. Now the sleep thing, like, well, they just give you Ambien, so you just take your fucking Ambien, you know what I mean? The problem is like, well, I take my Ambien and I think I'd be in bed, and then I'd wake up in the strip club and it'd be like ready. It'd be like time for me to go drive and run everybody into the ground, and I'd be like, I thought I went to bed like a long time ago, you know what I mean? Like, and then I told the doc, I was like, hey, you know, I'm taking this Ambien, but I don't think it works no more. And he's like, well, how do you normally take it? And I was like, well, I take my Ambien.
Suppositories. Yeah,
no, I was like, I crush them up. I eat a couple, I drink a fifth, I go to bed, but I wake up in the strip club. And he's like, no more Ambien for you.
I'm surprised he didn't say take more.
Yeah, he's like, hey, here,
double it up.
Take mine.
Yeah.
Double the dose.
No major injuries, like nothing, like broken legs, blowing knees.
Yeah, I had a broken back. I think I broke it in 2004 in Iraq, but I didn't know till 2009. I had my back hurt. I had to go get an MRI, and like, you know, like the doc, the PA is like the same PA. It's been forever. This guy Kurt, you know, and he's like, you broke your back, and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. When did you break your back? I'm like, you've been my doctor for how long here in this fucking compound? Like, when did I break my back? You know what I mean? He was like, that's a good question. I was like, well, did you ever tell me I broke my back? And he's like, I have not. I'm like, well, then how would I know? But like, I broke my back at some point. I remember it hurt in like 2004, but like, I didn't want to miss fucking one night, not fucking 10 minutes, not fucking 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, so guys would be hurt and be like, fuck that. What do I got to do to go out tomorrow? Because you didn't know that was so exciting about it. You didn't know what was next. Like, you could be the next fucking Uday Kuse guys. You know, you could be the Saddam guys, right? And this is real, and this history's happening, and you're fucking in it, you know?
Obsession. It's an obsession.
Yeah.
Finally,
For real.
Where does the Sheriff of Baghdad name come from?
So when I was a sergeant major, most of the time I did my time in Baghdad, and it was just how it worked out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they divide up teams for outstations. I always ended up at Baghdad. I don't know how, right? So, but when I was a sergeant major, there was a guy, he was like the 82nd I don't know, you retired as like the division ops sergeant major, something like that, right? Super funny guy, bigger guy, paratrooper his whole life, enlisted, great guy, right? So he worked for the State Department during the war, and he ran like, I don't know what it's called, like the Crisis Action Center, right, in the embassy in Baghdad, like during the war, you know what I mean? And like, he's like, you know what I did? And I was like, what? He's like, nothing. He's like, you know what the State Department does during the war? And I was like, what? He was like, stays out of it. And I was like, oh, okay, right? Like, so made all this money, and then eventually his wife said, you just can't be gone no more, right? So took a brag job, came to work for us. So one day he's like, hey, Sergeant Major, what size are you? I'm like, I don't know, double, triple X at the time. Why? What do you got? And he was like, well, when I worked for the State Department, I made these T-shirts, right? And like, I still got a ton of like bigger sizes. And I was like, we always wear our own PT clothes. Like, I ain't worn Army uniform since I was a kid, PT uniform, right? So I was like, dude, give me them T-shirts. Like, I wear them for training, jiu-jitsu, like I'll ruin them, So he gives me these T-shirts, and on the front, it's like the U.S. Embassy logo, Baghdad, right? And on the back, it's like, it says really big Sheriff. And then under it, like same length, it says a Baghdad. And under that, in smaller print, it says serving strategic policy, one citizen at a time. You know what I mean? So like no State Department people would wear these shirts. Like no one thought it was funny. So he just ends up with all these shirts, right? So he gives them to me, and I started wearing them like during jiu-jitsu. I'd go to matches on the weekend, pistol, sniper matches, like kind of hitting a little everything. And I always wore the Sheriff of Baghdad T-shirts till I had a bunch of them, right? Till I wore them all out and they were gone, right? But so people are just like, oh yeah, you're that Sheriff of Baghdad guy. And then a buddy of mine, like,
I was hoping for some fucking amazing story, but it's like T-shirts.
Yeah. So yeah, T-shirts. Yeah. This dude Mike, who's a funny guy, gave it to me, right? So a buddy of mine, like when I retired, he's like, hey, if you're going to teach people to shoot, you got to have a business because of taxes. And he's a business guy, and he's like, you need an LLC or an S corp or whatever, right? And I was like, okay, like, oh, that's good, thank you, right? And he was like, and if you don't name yourself the Sheriff of Baghdad, he's like, you're just fucking this up. He's like, every time I say it, I laugh. He's like, it's the best business name ever. And I was like, okay. So I went and did exactly that.
And the whole time I thought it was just son of a bitch. SOB tax.
Yeah. Sheriff of Baghdad. But I do rock the SOB all the time. You know what I mean?
Fuck, dude. That's a good one. That's what I got, dude. That's pretty good. You got any questions for me?
Workout questions.
Let's do it.
So my knee's been hurting lately, even though I don't traditionally have any knee pain.
Where does it hurt?
Bottom inside by the knee, and then outside top.
Okay.
Is this like a tendonitis thing? Like, what is this?
Probably. When we go up to the gym, we can fuck around, but it could be the fact. So 99.9% of our contact with this earth is through our feet.
Yeah.
So what I found is most knee injuries come from either fucked up hip position or down chain into the foot. So what you can do is take the foot off or take the shoes off, and we'll fuck with the feet a little bit. Yeah. And we'll see if we can figure out like what the right position is. It very well could be lack of ankle flexion, dorsiflexion. We can look at you can't fire your glute if your big toe's not in the ground. So putting the big toe on the ground, driving the knees out, actually creating arches. You lived your life fucking wearing boots. I mean, you got a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
It could be a lack of, weakness in the glutes. So what we'll do is we'll focus on some of the the trunk strength kind of deal that we do, which is a lot of like dead bugs and rotation. Just go through all the warm up stuff, and then we'll fucking train some legs, and we'll see. And it very well might be that maybe something's just getting weak because you're not using it in the right way. So we might have to just kind of change up. So what I found is that in the gym, everything that's in the gym are just merely tools in the tool chest, right? Like we're going to go fucking work on a diesel. Like you don't know what tool you're going to need. I'm going to know when we fucking get there, but we got to have tools. And so where I get a little nervous with training, especially people where they have like, everything looks like a hammer. Everything looks like a fucking wrench. Yeah. And so I look at the human body as everybody has different anthropometrical ratios. Everybody has a different fucking movement history, different injury history. What I'm trying to do is get you to move the best of your ability. It could be the fact that when you do jits, you're doing a lot of like, I don't know, weird kind of rotational stuff, and it could be a lack of hip mobility. So, I mean, it really just comes down to figuring out what allows you to be the best version of you and have the greatest success based upon the individual. Because everybody has like a unique skill set, right? Like one of the things which I don't think you can do jujitsu unless you have incredible hip mobility. Like you have to be able to have fucking mobile hips. And if you don't have mobile hips, then like that's a huge fucking problem. Because as I've rolled with guys, all of a sudden you get into a position, and I bait dudes into triangles all the time, and then I square my shoulders, and then I fucking stack pass them. And most people, especially when I grab their arm and I go to staple their leg, don't have the hip flexibility on external rotation. And like as you get into that position and you kind of hold them, you grab their pants and let them cook, and you can see the fucking stress on their face.
They're like, just pass already.
Oh yeah, and I don't. I just fucking hang out there, and it's like, let them cook. And like that's because a lot of people lack hip mobility. So when I started working at Arash and Victor and Philippe, we put a lot of manual resistance and a lot of adductor, a lot of hip mobility, to the point where I call it stripper hips, where those guys have stripper hips to the point where they can get in stack passes, and you can be on the bottom and just let fucking, I'll stay here all day. If you don't want to pass me, I can hold it. So, but that really comes down to, so for me, my right knee is fucked up because I got a bone chip. So I'm missing flexion, and I can hide the flexion in my knee because I'm mobile in the hip. And then the other one too is a lot of people really lack a lot of like transverse rotation. So like stapling the hips, like how far you can move this way. And then we start looking for imbalances. Like for Victor, for example, extremely mobile this way, not as mobile this way. So then, but those guys, like when they become world class, they become very specific on like, hey, like, you know, if you're coming into my guard, I always want to be on this side, and then I'm going to start working it this way. Whereas I think when you're early in jits, you try to go both ways, but then over a while you realize that everybody goes to the right because most people are right-handed. You know,
I'm left-handed. This shit freaks me out all the time.
I go left-handed all the time too, because even though I was taught to write with my right hand, I'm really left-handed. Like it's the weirdest thing. Like I played on the left side of the offensive line, and for some reason, if I'm looking straight, I can see that fucking door right there, but I can't see the table with the liquor bottles. So like I have incredible vision off of the left side, and I'm more like flexible and dominant on the left, but like I'm stiffer to the right. So when I went to go play for the Chiefs, they had me play right tackle, which was pretty stressful for me because I can't see that well. I don't rotate this well very well. So I was real good on the left, and like this way I could see everything. This way I couldn't. And so it was just like I always felt like I was playing out of position because I was playing in a position that they asked me that I just didn't have aptitude for. I was able to do it because I was, you know, like technical enough to be able to play 4 years there, but I didn't like ever a single day ever feel like, oh shit, this is uncomfortable doing this. And I think what happens in jits and within training, we kind of get stuck into like what we like and what feels comfortable. And sometimes what it does is it takes somebody to like look from the outside. And I'm sure it's the same thing with shooting, right? Somebody get your eyes.
I do the same shit.
And like, hey, like this feels great to me. And then you look and you're like, oh, it's kind of fucked up. You get stuck in a bad movement pattern. Let's do this. Mm-hmm. Or what they're trying to do is figure out like a diagnostic, like, oh, everything goes to low and to the left, or this goes here. So I think we can do the same thing in training. I do it from what I call trunk training, where like, you know, we'll put like some basic movement stuff in the beginning, and it's based on like step, squat, and lunge and rotation and all the little pieces. And then from there, I break everything down to X, Y, and Z axis. So rotation, step. And then, you know, from there, we just figure out these 7 primal movements, 3 axes of rotation, you know, different planes of motion. And then you look at this kind of human blueprint for movement. And then you put people into the blueprint and you see where the fucking weak points are and where the lug nuts are loose, and then you just tighten that shit up. And it's not difficult, to the point where I solved this problem like over 10 years ago. And so when people start talking about training, I'm like, no, we solved this fucking problem. Like there's really no argument on this shit. And people come on and they have these great ideas. And I'm like, it's great, but like, let me show you this blueprint for human movement. One of the greatest bits of feedback I ever got was I was fortunate with to go down to Mid-South, down to Shaw's.
In Mississippi?
Mm-hmm.
I've been there.
With the guys with Team 4. And so I got to go, basically train side by side with them for 6-7 days. And what was amazing was that the instructors, who are probably the best fucking shots I've ever seen. I've never seen like so smooth, like no wasted motion. Like they're doing the demos and you're like, fuck, dude, every one of these guys.
I've seen better. He's seen better. He's seen way better. Am I right or am I right?
For me as a civilian,
I'm just kidding.
These guys were fucking lights out.
Yeah.
And what was amazing,
John Shaw was also a 3-gun world champion for I don't know how many years. That's what he does for a living.
Yeah, and I think it was like Hattie was one of the guys, and I can't remember all the dudes, Steve-O, and Ross, and those guys.
Ross was there when I was there. Those guys are all lightning.
Yeah. Well,
I just kidding.
That's all they fucking do is shoot.
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting was that they naturally, instinctively figured out the most efficient positions to shoot from to be able to manage recoil. Like, for example, they knew that if I'm standing here, that if my feet are slightly outside my hips and I internally rotate and I get my big toe on the ground, I can manage recoil. They knew that if they drop and retracted their shoulders and pulled the gun in and actually shot from their lats and retracted and dropped their shoulder this way, they can manage recoil better, and so like as I'm watching these guys shoot.
Okay, I want to pump the brakes. I'm on the range every day. I wholeheartedly disagree with all of that.
Okay.
Only because I did video diagnostics every single day of my life since fucking 2011.
Well, we're going to go up to the gym.
I have a ton of videos that show different, but I believe in your blueprint.
Yeah. So like if the knees track over the insteps, right? Like you talk about like a blueprint for like the universal athletic position, right? You think about a linebacker in position. Yep. The knees are always going to track over the insteps. Very few people externally rotate out here. If anything, you're more pigeon-toed, big toe forward, big toe on the ground because it gets the glute to fire, right? So there's some like positions that people can move and athletes move well from. So some of the positions that I saw in my own training and that I work with athletes, I saw them use on the range in terms of managing recoil, which was interesting for me because these guys didn't know shit about movement.
It's what do they call that? Kinesiology, the body stuff, body mechanics.
Yeah, but
the shit that works.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's a million different, your version of what works and like this. I'm sure there's all these little
I got to disagree with that.
Oh, there's only one thing that works?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because watch the video. And what you'll see is there's best practices that the video will show that most guys don't even talk about these days. I see this all the time on video. But I would tell you this. Here's what I see. You get them shoulders and them hips in the right place, this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But how many things can you apply that to? Fucking squatting, deadlifting, right? And then that's why I say it's like all kinesiology because it's like
there's efficient human movement, and it doesn't matter if you're doing jiu-jitsu or you're boxing or shooting a gun. There's a blueprint for human movement, and we can see it because I have a theory that our eyes are designed for symmetry. Like, I'm not a Ferrari guy, but front engine V12 Ferrari, I mean, we heard those cars. I mean, the fucking sounds. Like the way, like we're watching those cars go around. I can't tell you all of the different pieces in this, but they're so aesthetically pleasing because the aesthetics translate to speed. Like, there was nothing that was out of shape. Everything was kind of, like, if you look at it just from you pull out, everything was so aesthetically pleasing. And you're like, fuck, dude, these things just look fast because they are fast. There was nothing like fucking cattywampus. Everything was fine. And so I think with human movement, or when we watch people do things that are athletic, like let's say you watch the Olympics, you're watching the NFL on Sunday, you watch somebody do something and you're like, oh shit, like, that's different than what other people do. And it looks effortless and simple. And they're able to just use their body in amazing ways. And when we see it, when you see it. It's like yesterday, we saw pretty girls walk in. We all we didn't have to say anything. All of a sudden, he looks at me. I'm like, oh no, I fucking saw it. Like that girl, like that girl was a stunner.
I see nothing at the Indy. I see nothing,
dude. But it was just it was one of those things where I think we are trained for symmetry, and we know when everything just kind of works.
Well, you think I'll this has happened to me is it's taken me a long road to get to where I am now, from the just be the disabled veteran and eat your pills, right? But I started doing step-ups. My left, I could do a step-up. My right, I couldn't even do a step-up at first. And it wasn't that I lacked the strength. It's my ankle. I didn't have it didn't move enough, right? The mobility of my ankle was too stiff for me to be able to get up on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now, I've been doing I do the savage squat every day, put your butt to your heels. I've been getting lower, right? I've been doing other stuff, the Turkish get-ups, and that's really helped my step-ups. But I couldn't get strong because I didn't have the mobility to do the exercise. And it was my right ankle, I hurt in a free fall jump years ago, right? So it's always been stiff, but I thought my shit was supposed to be stiff. You know what I mean? I thought my ankles stiff were strong, and in my whole life, and then realized stiff isn't strong. Stiff is weak, and flexible is strong because that's the way muscles work, right?
Yeah.
So just in my journey in the past,
your body won't allow you to go into a range of motion. It can't develop stability. So it's a universal truth. So that's what I always get. I always caution people with a lot of yoga and a lot of where they are getting to unnatural ranges of motion that they probably can't do stability, but because it's passive, they're using heat and warm ups and all those stuff to get to some unnatural ranges of motion. That's why fucking yoga people end up getting hip replacements like crazy, just because the fact that they're going to ranges of motions that they're not designed to create stability. So when we watch a lot of athletes start moving, and it very well might be that the reason your ankle was stiff was because something else wasn't mobile and it was the body locking down. So, it could be the fact that the glute didn't fire. It could be a weak trunk. It could be everything. And the only thing we have to do is just literally put you into the model, see where it's fucked up, and then we just tighten the lug nuts, and then we put a training system together.
I'm ready.
And it's gonna be fucking rad.
I got one more question.
Lay it on me.
I got drug around the mat at Worlds by this big Mongolian guy.
Worlds what? Jits or?
Yeah, jits, gi jits. I need to up my gas tank.
I got you.
I
got something for you.
Okay. Explain how do I, because so I went to a competition camp, and I did this with other people. So, they give you, you had to do minimum of it started with 10,000 steps a day, and then went to 15,000, right? They gave you a workout. We're supposed to do 4 workouts a week, but over time that workout got really easy for me. So I added more weight, and then I did it all at one time. You know what I mean? So I kind of followed this program. So I did strength, and the strength really helped my joints, and the strength makes me durable. But I think the piece I missed was conditioning, where I was doing strength with cardio, right? Because it's hard. We talked about this earlier. When someone grabs you, they want to win all the gold medals ever produced right now with this one grip on your neck. So it's you have to be able to use strength, but with cardio, right? And then so how do you up that gas tank?
So I had the exact same question, because when I came into jiu-jitsu, you start rolling as a white belt. It's fucking tiring, right?
And the dude you're with is just that could have been better.
So what I did is I put heart rate monitors on Victor and Philippe and the guys, and I started looking at zones that they hit, and I realized that those guys never get out of zone 2. Right? They're so efficient. And the better you get at jiu-jitsu, the more efficient you become, and the less that it becomes any form of actual conditioning exercise.
Strength.
So what jiu-jitsu turns into is skill development. Yeah. I'm in here harnessing my skill. I'm learning my skills. This is my skill. You lift weights because you need to be strong. A few things happen as we age, right? We lose mitochondrial density, but we also lose the ability to recruit motor units. So that's why we got to lift heavy weights, and you got to lift them and be dynamic, and we got to find, we talked about, a whole model to help you be the best version of yourself. The issue that became the massive piece was figuring out what part of the conditioning of the different zones within the heart rates that we weren't tapping into. And the one we were never getting into was any of that kind of upper register, zone 3, zone 4. So I put something together called the Superhuman Protocol.
Love how that sounds.
I have tested it extensively on the guys to the point where they would not gas. So we put a protocol together, and what we ended up doing is lifting weights. They would do all their zone 2 recovery work, because that's really the big pool that we can get to. And then we do a fairly specific amount of volume in that upper registers. And the volume only increases as the adaptation increases. So once they're able to hit a certain number, and I'll lay it all out for you. Once you hit those numbers, then it unlocks another piece and another piece and another piece, and then there's a finite piece that we can get to in that volume. But if you can't unlock it, then we just stay there until you are comfortable with it. And what we found was that once we started balancing and we started training in those upper registers, they were strong, they were stable, they were able to rotate, they were moving in different planes of motion. We had been tapping into those upper registers and then looking at jiu-jitsu as their technique training. This is their skill development. Yeah. And then being able to just do some different things. Like one of the issues we were getting into was a lot of hand stuff. So being able to make sure the hands are strong, and the only way that's going to happen is by doing some Shark Tank. And the other issue we're running into, which is another one, is Philippe and Victor and those guys were sometimes training 2 and 3 times a day. Yeah. So being able to monitor the intensity and being able to monitor recovery. So looking at heart rate variability and being able to, we were doing grip tests, to see how far their grip was. And then when they would come in and start training with the weights, I put some stuff early into the training that allowed me to know whether or not these guys were recovered enough to be able to do what I wanted. And if they didn't, I knew that I was going to have to back it down. So it's basically having a little bit of auto regulation involved, and then being smart enough in terms of like the grand scheme of volume, intensity, duration, exposure, all these pieces. And then also realizing these kids are in their early 20s, so they're like fucking rubber. Yeah. So which is like almost is worse because I can just hit them as many times as I want, but then realizing like this isn't going to help them in the long run. That I'm trying to get these guys be good for the next 20 years, not just the next 20 days or 20 weeks. So I think especially for you, being a little bit older, having a fucking lot of mileage on you, just being really smart.
Hard mileage.
Yeah. Not easy miles, but being smart with it and, figuring out that we're going to have to tap into those upper registers and making sure that we do a lot of recovery zone 2 work. And then we got to lift weights and then make sure you're getting enough exposure. And you don't, and like, this is another thing that Shanji made a great point. He's like, you don't have to try to fucking kill everybody and kill because at that point when you're fighting for your life, you're also not learning the skills. Like if everything, like you think about, they'll usually teach a move and then you kind of work with your partner a little bit. And like all of a sudden you have like a dickhead partner that's not letting you execute anything, and it just turns into a fucking like fist fight.
Or a stalemate.
And then you're almost like, hey dude, let me just do the fucking technique. Yeah. And then you go to do like, with some partials and some live rolls after. Like whatever I try to do is if we learn something that day, I try the entire roll, the partials to execute what we learned. And then most people fucking don't do that. And I'm always like, dude, we just spent fucking 30 minutes learning something. Like, let's use it. Right. And then they're just more concerned with wins and losses, where I don't give a shit. Like I'm not gathering my ego from basically doing jiu-jitsu at like 5:00 on a Wednesday night. Whereas a lot of people, like, you have a bigger pool to pull from ego from. Like if this is your ego, if this is your defining moment, like, but what we have to do also is just look and say, hey, if you're going to do worlds, you're going to do a big event, let's periodize for it and make sure that we're monitoring. And there's a whole bunch of diagnostics that we can check along the way.
Man, that's it's kind of what I figured. I figured I needed to do like more Versa bike. Like really hard exercises.
But just in very very small,
20 seconds at a time, and then maybe 20 on, 20 off, or 20 on, 10 off, or something, right? But I just needed some guidance. What I did is I got I went to one of these competition camps right in Tennessee, and they were awesome, but like I think there could be more to it. You know what I mean? I think like they kind of scratch the surface to get you going, and then if you really want to do this, like there's more to it. And I think I've learned here in the from Worlds, it's like, okay, I did cardio and I lifted weights, and you think that's good, and then for a guy my age, that's good, right? But the reality is like, well, I probably needed to do jits 4 days a week, not 7, just 4. I probably needed to lift weights for strength 4 days a week, right? I probably needed to do cardio 4 days a week, and I probably needed 4 days a week of conditioning.
Or maybe what I mean? Once every 72 hours.
There you go. Yeah. But
just once every 2 hours, like you get a dip into that pool, and then you kind of like see how you recover, and I see you're wearing your whoop and checking these things. So at least then there's some other ways you could do it, but I think that's a really fascinating one. Like looking at breath rate, how many hours you slept. I know we talked about. I mean, just being able to clean up some of your sleep stuff, which I'm not the expert in, but I fortunately know the people. I think would be a fucking world of help.
I'm gonna tell you this: if I was like 27% for worlds. And then okay, I like the whoop. When I do jits, I do wear the whoop underwear.
Yeah.
I know this is weird. Timmy and all them wear the chest thing. Yeah. I didn't like that. So I got the underwear, right? Mm-hmm. So I watch my heart rate. And what's great is on the whoop is you'll see it'll creep up round 1, it'll come to here. And then round 2, the heart rate goes up a little bit. And then the other day, my hardest rounds was with one of the black belt coaches. And it's my 5th fight today. And it's when you look at the whoop, you just see the plateau of the 5-minute rounds. You know what I mean? And you see it just spike. But I mean, what if I was 90% on my sleep? How would that have changed my fight? Because I'll tell you, I feel when I'm in the red, honestly, I feel most days I wake up in a brain fog.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We talked about it this morning. Yeah. My brain is shit at jits in the morning. You're okay, John, grab his wrist. And I'll be okay. And you're go. And I'm what was I supposed to do again? Grab his wrist, goddamn. I'm
I don't do good at jits at 6 a.m. I like to get up. I like to get 30 minutes on the bike. I'll get in the ice, with the ice barrel deal. I like to do that and kind of chill out a little bit, then figure out my day. And then if I want to go train at lunch, and kind of that time is a better time for me. And then even a little bit later. The problem is if I roll too late and we go to a 7 o'clock night class, I can't fucking sleep. Yeah, and I'll fucking stay there, and and I'm wired up and I eat too late, and there's kind of a sweet spot for me. But at 6 o'clock, I just I don't know, it's not enjoyable to me. I'll go, but that's the other issue. I don't want to get to the point with jiu-jitsu, at least for me, where I feel like I'm slogging through it. I'm just going because I have this blind fucking ability just to muscle through things. Yeah. I want to go and feel like I'm enjoying myself, and I don't feel like I enjoy myself. It feels like we're going to fucking early morning training, and this is what time we train, and you have to fucking do it or we're going to get in trouble, which I'm sure you guys know all about. I want to feel like I'm present and I'm excited to be there.
Yeah, I do better at the noon classes generally. The 6 o'clock night class or whatever, I'm shit at those also. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things for me. It's I suck at the situational based stuff. Okay, now grab his hand. Wait, why am I grabbing his hand? And then
I think that stuff is so so in football, we used to do a lot of walkthroughs, right? So they'd set up a defense in here, and we'd always go from start. There was never a moment where we would situational, but I think it's really interesting where all of a sudden, I'm on top and this guy's playing bottom half guard and he's really good and he's trying to get to this. And that's a position that I know guys like to get me in, because there's a lot of guys that like to play that bottom half guard. And so for me, being in those that position, top and bottom, I need more exposure in that, because I always seem to fucking end up there. If I don't end up there, I'm in a good place and I'll pass. But that's a position that fucking I always get stuck in. Mm-hmm. And so I think figuring out how if you look at 10 rolls, what's the position I always end up getting into that's just the one where you're thinking now what the fuck do I do? Mm-hmm. Then I think the positional works well. It does for me too, because I'm let's just start here, because I always know I got to navigate this fucking task.
That's how I picked my game plan. Is I always ended up here. Side, let's just say side control. It was well, I'm always here. So, okay, this is part of my game plan, right? And then what do I do from here? So then it's well, if I'm always here anyway, let's see, I need finishes from here. Yeah. Okay, so let's try finishes next, right? Yeah. So, but I would tell you this is my game plan was shit at World. I mean, we can talk about it, we can not talk about it, but I could fucking, I'll shred this fucking game plan shit. But, I try to develop my game plan off of where I think I would be and where I end up. And I think that's solid all day long. However, I think there's more to it.
Fellas,
a lot more.
I'm going to duck out.
Okay.
John, damn good to meet you. I've got infant photos. Wife's blowing me up.
I got you.
So
right,
life.
Yeah, see you, buddy.
Baby pics.
Yeah. But no, I'm not going to claim to fucking be a wizard in, like the Manaus magic. But like, that's where like, Shanji has been really helpful for me, because whenever we roll, he's always like, oh, this is a good piece of your game. Yeah. Like I have a hard head. So Shanji's always like, I want you to put your forehead and use your head to pivot and pass on your head. So I like try to put my head on people's chin and in
tripod.
Yeah.
I do this all the time.
And he's like, just bring the heavy head, like kind of fucking smack people a little bit and then pivot on it. So I always get a lot of like marks on my face.
My face is always fucked.
And then like people are like, your face is fucked up. I'm like, yeah, because I'm pivoting on my head.
I know.
So I think that there's people naturally lend skills.
Yeah.
And then you just have to find somebody who you work with that's skilled enough to be like, oh, that's good. Let's practice this. And that's where Shanji's the fucking best in the world.
Yeah, I think like if you got to take those places where you end up all the time and turn it into, whether it's defensive, like I always end up here, guys smashing me, like learn how to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like learn the top two defenses.
Side survival is what I call it. Like you're on the bottom, you're just like, let me get on my side.
Yeah. But I think all that stuff is, and I just love jiu-jitsu. I love the strategy of it. I love, and I tell people like, don't stop doing it, because if you stop, your body's not gonna, that's gonna go, and then you'll be my age trying to restart it again, realizing how much I liked it. I should have been doing it all along.
Or you get screwed and only get to do it like 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and then you come back and you're like, God damn it, my ribs are sore.
I know, like guys are just crushing you, and like, what's wrong with you today? You're like, what? Why are you so good today? You know what I mean? Like, what have you been eating?
Yeah.
Fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I last week I rolled with a guy, and I always think it's funny when people try to like, get me in close guard and then they don't break posture, because the first thing I'll do is I kind of get an underhook, and then I'll kind of reach across and put my elbow and kind of pin them, and then I put my head on the ground, and I basically do that Hodger pass where I'll walk my legs and just basically just hold them in place and just try to fucking bend them like a fucking taco. And I passed that guy's guard, and like the guy was like, because he couldn't see, because I like my chest is on his head. I got like an underhook in the elbow, basically pushing his neck as I'm walking my legs, and then finally got to the final leg and like just kind of stepped over it right inside control and just basically side smashed that guy. Like got him into like technical mount on the side and fucking wrenched him, and then let him get back on turtle, and kind of just like played with him back and forth, just because I was excited to try different things. Like you get the choke, and I go right to the point where the dude's going to tap, and then you let him go. Yeah. And the guy was like, "You had me submitted," and I was like, "Yeah, but I like it's more fun for me to get to that position and try different things, because I don't get as many opportunities to do this. Yeah. So if I fight right in and get a submission, like what does that fucking do? And then we got to start over. Well, whereas I want to practice this position. I'd
rather have the 5-minute epic battle than the I submitted you in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's like, you want to do this again? Like,
so
do you really?
So Philippe, who's one of the guys who work with, Philippe's one of the top guys in the world.
Yeah.
And his triangle is fucking lethal. And to the point where he triangles a rush all the time. And it's kind of like this inside joke. So we went to roll, and I fucking gave him the triangle, and I was like, squeeze me and see how painful it is. And he fucking got me, and I was like going out, and I could see him kind of letting up. He's like, oh, you going to tap? And I was like, that's a good one. I'm never going to get in that position again. But like his legs are so strong. He is, he's like, it's fun with these kids to roll with them, and then to train them in the gym, and to know exactly how strong they are, and then go out and train with them and realize like he's using 100% of everything that he has in the gym. Yeah. I'm sure you've rolled with guys that were like, big, strong dudes that weren't strong, or a guy that maybe wasn't strong.
Beach muscle.
But these kids, like every ounce of strength that they've gained in the gym, they are able to translate to the mat, which for me is a good indicator that the training is working as it should.
Yeah, I agree. Well, man, I appreciate it. I mean,
let's go do it.
That's the two things I need to figure out my knees. And I know I don't have knee problems. Like,
no, dude,
I hear all kinds of stuff from guys.
Let's go up and train. We'll figure this thing out, and then we'll go into it. So thanks for tuning in to Power Athlete Radio. We're out of here. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by ko-fi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Power Athlete. Your support makes a difference. See you.